as president, you have tremendous, it's called extreme power. You have extreme power. You can, just by the fact you say, close the border, and the border is closed. That's it. Very, very simple. You don't need all of this nonsense that they talk about.
That's Donald Trump on Tuesday dismissing the bipartisan work in Congress on a plan to secure the border and instead touting the, quote, extreme power he would wield as president. You don't need legislation. You just need him and his unchecked power. That's the argument. Let's bring in Democratic Senator of Connecticut, Chris Murphy. He's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and, of course, a key negotiator in that bipartisan plan to strengthen security at the southern border, the bill that Donald Trump had his Republicans in Congress kill. Senator, good morning. So much to talk to you about here, 12 days out in the campaign, but just your reaction, having worked literally for months on that legislation, to what Donald Trump said.
Well, first of all, the term extreme power, you find that nowhere in the Constitution. Donald Trump is telling you over and over and over again that you are going to be witnessing a constitutional crisis the minute he becomes president. He is prepared to use the levers of the federal government to take power and to punish his political enemies. But of course, I remain angry and heartbroken that we worked for 6 months on a bipartisan plan to secure the southwest border. Republicans were in the room for all of it. And when Donald Trump said jump, they just asked how high. He said, I want to kill that bill because it would work, because it would bring order to the southwest border. And I don't know how I'd win if the border was under control, if I couldn't use chaos at the border as a means to try to make Americans scared of their neighbors, of people who are different from them, of migrants coming to this country. And Republicans, almost to a person, followed Donald Trump's lead. We had probably 20 votes for that bipartisan border security bill. When Donald Trump came out against it, we lost almost all of them. And that tells you what life will be like if Donald Trump is president. And if Republicans run the Senate, they are not going to stand up to him. They are not going to question his power grab, his abuse of power over and over again. They have done what he has wanted on that immigration bill, and they will do what he wants if they have power in the Senate and if he's in the White House.
Senator, what you just said prompts me to ask you the following question. If you look at all the polls, especially the questions asked in polls, there seldom is a question about the cost of division, intentional division, caused by people in one political party more than the other political party. What impact do you think it has had on the dialogue and the temperature of this nation that from the top on down, from Donald Trump on down, a lot of Republicans are seemingly intent on using language and behavior to further divide Americans?
So that is the primary lesson that I glean from Trump's decision to kill the bipartisan immigration bills. And we had a real opportunity to bring not just the Congress, but the country together on an issue that does often divide us, immigration and the border. Donald Trump killed that bill for one reason, because division and hate, it's his oxygen. He literally can't imagine how he would win power or hold power if he couldn't convince us to be scared of our neighbors, to be scared of immigrants, to be scared of Muslims, to be scared of gay children. It was harrowing to watch him make that decision and watch Republicans follow him. Listen, I don't want this country to fall apart, but a second Donald Trump presidency, when there's nobody like General Kelly in office to try to stop him from doing the most hateful things to divide us from each other, locking up his political enemies, setting up mass detention camps for migrants, that's a really, really scary world to live in. Remember, when Democrats were in charge, we were passing bipartisan legislation. The gun bill was bipartisan. The infrastructure bill was bipartisan. Even the gay marriage bill was bipartisan. Most Americans want us to be working together. That's what Democrats do when we're in power. Donald Trump won't bring Republicans and Democrats together. And without adults in the White House in Donald Trump's second term, the most hateful, most reckless, most divisive things that could actually cause the entire country to fall apart, he's going to be able to do those things. And he's not bluffing. He's not kidding. And everybody needs to understand that.
Senator, good morning. You've been on the campaign trail helping your Senate colleagues. You were just in Pennsylvania a few days ago helping Senator Casey there. Polls showing a tightening race there, tightening races throughout the country. That tends to happen barely into Election Day. Pundits seem to think that Democrats have an uphill climb to keep the Senate. Give us your sense of what issues are resonating with voters as you head out on the trail with your colleagues.
Yeah, I think there are a number of issues. I mean, listen, economics are still the top issue for people. And I do think that many Americans don't believe what Trump is saying, right? Trump is saying on the campaign trail that his economic policy will essentially boil down to two things: a second massive tax break for billionaires and corporations, paired with a $4,000 tax increase on Americans through this sort of thoughtless policy of tariffs. Tariffs are useful when they're used in a targeted way, but Donald Trump is talking about a broad-based tariff that would raise costs for every American by $4,000. Again, this time around, you have to believe what Donald Trump is saying. And I think what is keeping some of these races close all across the country, in Pennsylvania and otherwise, is that Americans, think it's bluster. It's not. And we've got to do a better job of explaining to people that Kamala Harris is talking about tax cuts for working families, tax cuts for folks that want to start small businesses, an easier ability to get into your first home. And Donald Trump is literally out there on the campaign trail telling you that if you elect him, he'll just give all the tax breaks to his friends at Mar-a-Lago, and for everybody else, they get a big tax increase. People don't necessarily, it hasn't burned in enough in the electorate, and we've got to make sure that it does between now and Election Day.
Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, as always, thank you so much for being on this morning. We appreciate it.